So today I thought I'd show you my little work area in the kitchen of our townhome. Because it is a townhome, I don't have space for a workbench. We do have a garage, but the car and other things take up all the space in the garage. So I work here at the kitchen table when I'm assembling the buildings or having to work on my locos. And this is just an overview. I'm going to shut the camera off for a minute and set it up and go over to my seat, and what we're going to do is open up a package and see how we begin to make one of these N scale buildings. So the first thing we'll do is we'll turn on the work light. Here are here's the box, Woodland Scenics Town and Factory Building Set. As I said in the previous video, there's 13 buildings, all N scale, and it comes with a bunch of little accessories to finish off the buildings after they're painted and assembled. Some decals, some awnings, and some other items for putting on canopies and roof detail, things like that. So I'm going to go over now and open up the box, bring out a package, and show you how we in fact start the process to build one of these N-scale buildings. This is what they're calling their Pioneer Press building. I think I'll come in just a little bit. There's 13 of these little things, all in individual packets. This one's a little tight. Comes with a description. Full instructions, not much because it's a small building and you don't really need to know a lot. But this is, or will be, end up being the roof. These are the clear plastic sheets that we trim and make the windows. This is the inside door panels. You can see, if you can, that's what that's for. And then this is cut in half and it becomes a roof support underneath the roof to hold the roof up in place. And then these are the pieces. That's obviously the front of the building, one of the sides, another side, the back of the building, and then here's the door. And right here there's 4 little half chimneys that go on the back of the chimneys here. Now you notice that there's a lot of little knobs and pieces of, I don't know what you want to call it, flashing or whatever. All this has to be trimmed off, and to do this I use these very flat edge clippers, and we just start by cutting off the excess and you can see, because it's a very flat edge, in fact it comes off nice and smooth. And there's one side. The front of the building also has little things here on the bottom, so we'll trim them off. Well, some here on the top. That one flew away. Okay, so we have the front and the back and the 2 sides. Okay, so now we've trimmed off all the little knobs and flashing, and we have to now smooth off all the sides and edges so that after it's painted we'll have nice smooth surfaces. Woodland Scenics recommends using sandpaper with about a 180 grit. I happen to purchase 200 grit, which is slightly finer, and it's a real simple process, and I'll just show you how we go about doing that. I have just a sheet of sandpaper. There's the little chimneys. There's the door, the front, the back, and the two sides. And you just want to make sure, because I don't know if you can see it here, there's enough detail, but there's, even after you trim them off, there's little rough edges or sides. So we just rub them a little bit on the sandpaper. You can feel for it. It feels nice and smooth. But this will make it look a lot better after you paint it. There's the door. We're going to do the bottom of the front of the building. This is important if you, and you want the building to lay nice and flat on the surface of your platform or your layout. Now up here on the top, because there's a little detail where the side of the building or the edge of the building rises above, it's really, I can't really do that with sandpaper. So I'm going to use an emery board. And again, the reason you're doing this is so that when you paint it, you will get a nice, smooth, flat surface. It's also good to just do the whole back of the building, make sure it's nice and smooth. There was a little knob here in the middle of the door, so we're going to sand that off. I don't know how noticeable it would be, but even this is a little bit too wide, so I use this I guess you call it a lady's filing or manicure file. There's two sides to it: shaping, which is a little more coarse, and then finishing, which is a nice and smooth one. But it doesn't take much. It's a fairly soft plastic, and you can just feel with your finger whether you need to do more. And because this, when you turn it, you won't see it unless someone turns the building upside down, but it is nice, like I say, for the paint when it's on there to be nice and show no lines and be nice and smooth. And that takes care of the front, the back. Again, we have a little roughness on the top. Like I say, it doesn't take much. The bottom again had some knobs on it, so we'll do them smoothly. I don't know if you can see it. One of the things with these DPM Woodland Scenics buildings is that some of the edges are not square. In fact, there's just a little bit of an angle there. And because when you assemble the building you want it to be square, what you have to do is file down these little angles to get as close as you can to 90-degree edge. I don't know if you can see the difference, but that's getting closer to 9 degrees, where this one up here is, you can see they call it a draft angle, and they claim they have to have that in order to remove the piece from the molding. I never saw that before, and I've done a lot of buildings. When I did G-scale, I used Pola and Pico, and they never had anything like that. And then for my HO trains, I primarily used Fowler. They never had such a thing called a draft angle, but this DPM series of buildings, they all have this, and you do have to get it so that that edge is as close to 90 degrees as possible. I have to do that on both sides. Looking at it here, I don't know if you can see, but this was now 90 degrees, and that still has that little angle to it. The Woodland Scenics website has a series of videos where they show you how they do these DPM buildings in HO scale, but the same applies to the N scale. And their videos are quite good and quite extensive. If you don't file these down and get them to be as close to 90-degree sides as you can, then the buildings, you'll have a lot of trouble squaring up the buildings when you assemble them. Using my little dust brush just so I can hopefully see it more clearly. I'm going to put my visors on to even get a better look. Okay, I think they're 90 degrees. So we've done the door, the front, and the back. Now we'll do the sides. These also have what they call the draft angle. We'll have to get rid of that. Start by doing the bottom. Now we'll try and get rid of that draft angle on this side. And I'm doing that by putting a little more pressure on this edge. Hopefully the camera can pick up the difference, but that's much more of a 90-degree angle. Here you can still see the draft angle, and that's what we have to get rid of. Now I think this is the 12th building when this is done, this will be the 12th building, and there's one more to do. And this one piece of sandpaper has lasted for all 12 buildings, so you don't need a lot. It doesn't take a lot of sanding. It just takes a couple of minutes. But like I say, when you go to assemble the buildings and you want to get them true and square, It's really important that these edges be, in fact, square. And finally, right here on the edge, there's a little bit of a roughness. I'm going to use the finishing side. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but there's a little bit of some flashing or something right there at the chimney edge. So I'll take my little knife and just cut that off. There's a little bit of flashing inside the window. We'll cut that out. Let's look at these windows, make sure they're okay. A tiny little bit right here. And a tiny little bit on the lower edge of this one. Do this last one. You can see the flashing a little bit on there, and just real quickly we'll get rid of that. Again, there's a little bit of some flashing up there on the roof. Best way to judge is just run your finger across it. looks pretty clean to me. So the next step is to put these little chimney halves onto the backs of the sides. And I see I've got a little bit of window flashing there to get rid of. Now when you do these, when we glue these chimney halves on, it's important because the roof is going to be slanted generally towards the back. It's important to know which side of the building you're working on. And you can see right here, the one with the 2 windows, it doesn't show you, but this side has 3 windows. So this is going to be on this side, and that's going to be on that side. And that's important because these little chimneys, if you look carefully, you'll see that they are of 2 different lengths. That's the trash piece. So what we want to do, oops, there's a little bit of flashing in the bottom of this one. And the difference is very small, but if you can see they're a very slightly different height. So you want the 2 shorter ones to be towards the front edge and the 2 longer ones to be on the back. That way the roof will in fact slant towards the rear. So we have our 2 sides here. Let me get rid of this paper. Hopefully this shows up on the camera because the difference is quite small. But there are, in fact, if I look real closely, I can see that there's actually 1 extra, maybe 2 extra rows of bricks on the longer one. And like I say, the longer one is where you want that one on the back. Just going to clean this up a little bit before I put it on. It's easier to clean it up now. Then we just take a little bit of glue using a fair amount. You can put glue on both pieces if you want, but I find that by putting a fair amount on just the one piece, that generally works fine. And we take the longer one and put it on the rear I like to let it now sit for 30 seconds or so. I have to keep the tip of the glue clean, otherwise the tube gets clogged up. It can take you forever to get it unclogged. And now that it's set up for a minute, I want to make sure that they're lined up properly. And I use some tweezers to pinch both sides together, judge the height. And I start by putting the chimneys on because after they're dry, and I like to let them dry for several hours, my final sanding will be the tops of the chimneys. This glue I'm using, this Fowler, is a very nice glue. It allows you to reposition things for several minutes to get them as close to what you want as possible. And now that I look at it, I can see that I have them on the wrong edge. So I'll take this off. The short one goes on the front. And because the glue is still tacky, I can just go right back line them up. Check the height. Squeeze them together real good now. And I think you can see that this is down a little bit more than the rear edge. Well, now in fact, I had it right the first time. Crazy, huh? Give it a little more glue. because when it's turned like this in fact is the back. That's called a senior moment, or a series of senior moments. If you use a glue that sits too fast, if you've seen you've made a mistake, it might be difficult to correct your mistake. It's one of the reasons I like this Fowler glue. Like I say, it gets tacky in about a minute, but you have at least 5 minutes or more to move things around if you didn't get it right the first time. The only thing is you have to be sure to keep the tube clean. And I do that by pressing a little bit of air, make sure nothing but air is coming out of the tube. Yeah, now when I turn it, this is the rear and that's the front, and the rear is lower, as you can see, than the front, and that's what you want, because that will force the roof to be at an angle. Now this one here is a little loose, so I don't like that. I'm going to put some more glue on it. And every time we glue, you can see the glue at the top. Just press it, give it, squeeze a little bit, more comes out. You can see the, and just keep pressing. Until the only thing that's coming out is air. That way, like I say, the tube won't be clogged. I'm going to squeeze it and there. Squeeze them together. Make a final check on the alignment. cat's always hungry. And again, you can see this is lower than this one, so that the roof, when I put the will grade to the back. That's what you want. Now, that's it. I'm going to let that dry for several hours, maybe even 24 hours. And then we'll be ready to start painting.